everyone, and welcome to this week's Ask Paul Live. We are now live streaming, and so like last week, I'm going to give it 2 or 3 minutes just to let people connect to the live feed before we start going. Just while we wait for that, I hope everyone has had the best possible week they can in what has obviously been a really challenging time for all of us. I have had a few questions sent to me in advance, which I'll come to first of all once I've done some updates, but as I said, I'm just going to leave it about 60 seconds just to see a few more people join us before we get started. Let's get my live feed on my computer ready so I can see any questions coming through as I wait. Let's have a look to keep that updated. So you may see Peggy running about, my dog, so apologies if she does get in the way, though she seemed to be the main star of attraction last week, probably slightly more interesting than the questions people seem to be asking me, so always have a dog on the live feed where possible. Give it just another 30 seconds and then we'll get started with just some local updates, and then I'll start fielding your questions as they come through. Okay. Get my live feed there for my comments. Hello Paul, who I can just see has joined. Right, it's about a minute past, so I'm going to get on with some of the updates for the local area, and then we'll start doing some of your live questions. So I think probably the one that's been in the news the most the last couple of days has been the announcement of the temporary mortuary in Sturton. Now, there has been a bit of anger from some people that we have this in the local area. I think just to go over the reasons why it has been based here in this part of Leeds. First of all, the council needed a really quick site, one that it owned, that it could develop a temporary mortuary on very quickly. The site in Sturton is owned by the council, so that allows us to do that. It is also in an industrial estate, though there is not a million miles away some residential. It is pretty well blocked, and sometimes in the end decisions just have to be made really quickly. There have been some alternative sites people have suggested online. They really wouldn't have lended themselves to such a quick turnaround project. They were owned by the private sector, or they just weren't particularly suitable. Obviously my sincerest wish is that the temporary mortuary never has to get used, and that it is simply a precaution for us here in Leeds. The hospital has amazingly ramped up its ICU capacity, and hopefully we will be able to cope with whatever this virus throws to us, but it's only reasonable and practical that the council and the NHS did get some form of site there just in case. In terms of other local developments, all the local hubs are now fully operational. Here in the inner south, we've got 3 going, which are sort of cross-supporting each other. So we have Hamara, which is helping be the central coordination hub for Middleton Belle Isle. We have the Involve Centre here in Hunslet, which is covering most of LS10 in the Hunslet area, and parts of LS11 and the city centre. And we also have the Holbeck Working Men's Club with Slung Low, helping the majority of Holbeck, Beeston and other parts of the city centre. Now, those 3 hubs are coordinating as best as possible together, though they are effectively independent. They are getting donations made to them directly, and they are getting support from the Fair Share warehouse, which has been set up with the council, which is acting as the central distribution centre. They are frankly doing amazing work, and I think we should all be congratulating them on the huge work they are doing in extreme circumstances. They are helping some of our most vulnerable residents. I also think massive credit should be given to the Fair Share Central Distribution Centre, which has been set up in the matter of weeks. We'll be supplying 1,500 plus packages over the bank holiday weekend to those in need and to those who receive certain free school meals, etc. We've got the free school meals team who work in centrally, who are delivering food parcels to those who need them. We're, as a council, doing around 14,000 free school meals a day. So the effort that's gone in, and that's not including organisations such as Trinity Network, Kieran Bingham Foundation, South Leeds Live at Home, and a whole variety of other organisations who are literally feeding hundreds upon hundreds of our local residents a day. So I think between them all, we all need to give them a massive round of applause, because they are doing fantastic work helping some of the most vulnerable in our city. The other just real big thing I wanted to talk about before I start fielding questions from people is around domestic violence. Now, this is a really big focus point for everyone at the moment. Domestic violence is always an issue, predominantly affecting women, but also quite a lot of men are affected by domestic violence, particularly in the LGBT community. Huge concerns over how social isolation is impacting on domestic violence rates. Obviously, those relationships that were already in great strain being put into greater strain and putting many people at much more significant risk. Relationships that were perhaps not being strained by the sheer stress and anxiety caused by isolation. There is a post on my Facebook from earlier today with lots of numbers on for different support organisations. I will post that again in the feed comment. But we are very aware that domestic violence is going to be a significant issue during this lockdown period, and we will try and support, or should I say the third sector organisations with the council and the police will try and support people as best as possible. Again, as I said, that information is already on my Facebook page, but I will post some more up in due course. So, I'm just going to go through the questions that were already sent in to me, and then hopefully there'll be some more questions posted by people as we live feed. So I got one question which was on how are the supermarkets going to distinguish who is priority and not for their delivery slots. Now, I've not got a full answer from officers yet, but a lot is going to be based on the information people submit when they sign up to do their online shopping and their profile. So, for example, a lot of the online supermarket sales platforms will ask you for your date of birth, etc. The supermarkets are still working through this. Two of the big supermarkets, for example, Morrison's and Asda, have launched vulnerable customer cards. Morrison's is doing its vulnerable it's doing its key worker packages. So there's a lot going on in the background. So I've not got a full answer, and to the person that sent me the question, I will get you a full answer once officers have given it to me. But the general gist of it is they're relying a lot on the data they've been given by people who are signing up for the service and who have contacted them about what they're doing. Another question I've had is in relation to litter bins again. Now, there's been a bit of misinformation about what we can and cannot do. Our staff at Cleaner Neighbourhoods, who are basically the people who do the street cleaning, are still out and about doing some work. At one point we did have 50% of staff off ill or self-isolating. Now we are starting to get staff back. That is improving staffing levels, but we're also getting sickness within our refuge service. So a lot of the Cleaner Neighbourhood staff that can drive the cages, as we call them, which are the vans that look like cages, the road sweepers, are helping drive the bin lorries or helping the bin crews actually pick up the rubbish, etc. Now, we're hoping staffing levels will improve, but until that does happen, we are asking people where possible to avoid using our litter bins. They are getting cleaned on a very ad hoc basis dependent on staff levels. So no idea when we'll get back to full service on that. A lot will depend on the number of people who are self-isolating, being shielded under the government shielding scheme, etc. So please bear with us on that one. One of the other questions I got, which is a really nice one, is how many people have now volunteered to help under the council's volunteer scheme, and it's just around 8,000 people. So 8,000 people in Leeds have volunteered to help support those in self-isolation. There's the government's 750,000 people that have volunteered under the NHS scheme. We've distributed volunteer lists to all of the city's hubs to where people can help, and there will be some cross-coordination between the NHS volunteers and the council's volunteer system to try and support where that is possible. But a phenomenal number, 8,000 plus people volunteering to help those in Leeds is amazing. So thank you to everyone that has volunteered to do that. No one's asking me any questions live today, so apparently... look. Yeah, Usman, I think always domestic violence needs to be properly looked at. Going to the earlier comments, I think, again, what we have said is a lot of urges needed around is obviously making sure people are aware there is still support then they will get that proper support from the independent people who have the expertise in this. So this is not going to be people who don't have experience or skills or in the field doing it. We are directing people to the proper services so that can be dealt with. Let's have a look. Yeah, Phil, just going back to the litter bins. In some areas they are taped up. Now, those areas tend to be the areas that have been really hit the worst with the sickness. In some areas, like here in Hunslet, we've not had the sickness levels to the same level, so we've not felt the need to tape them up yet. They're still not getting collected as regularly as they would do, but they are getting collected ad hoc, and that's why there's a bit of a discrepancy. So because the way Cleaner Neighbourhoods works is they're zoned to different parts of the city, and some of those teams that have been hit the hardest have taken the decision to tape up bins to dissuade people. Some of the areas that have had sickness like ours but haven't been to the same level haven't. So it is one of those things which is a little bit hit and miss. Let's have a look at some other questions as they're coming through. People seem to like sending them privately to me rather than putting them to the feed, which is absolutely fine. Let's have a look. How much has the council lost in money? Right, interesting. So we, well, Phil, council tax holiday, probably connected to it as well. So as a council, we've worked out the approximate hit to our finances is around, somewhere around £121 million at the moment. That's affecting the revenue coming in from business rates, council tax support we're going to give, impacts on additional services and support. We've got about £22 million from the government at the moment, so the honest answer is we've been really, really heavily hit. In terms of the council tax question itself, so for those that are already on council tax support, we are looking via the funds we've received already to be giving around £150 worth of support to those. Again, going back to the question that was raised over the previous weeks, with council tax, we are taking an individualistic approach. So again, someone like myself who is receiving my full salary, I can still pay my council tax and therefore I should still pay my council tax. Those that are struggling, we're asking them to get in contact with council tax at our contact centre. We'll assess their needs. If they're eligible for council tax support, we'll get them signed up to that to prevent them going into arrears. If the situation is just that bad, we will then obviously look at things like deferments, payment plans and holidays. So we are taking that individualistic approach to make sure that those that can pay do pay. People like me, as I've said, for example, and those that can, then we make sure that limited amount of support we've got so far, as I've said, we're about £121 million down as a council. We've only got about £22 million coming from central government that we can use directly. We've given out quite a lot in business rate support, but that's a different kind of budget. But we will look at what we can do. Let's have a look. Some more questions coming through. So Ruth's question. Is fibre broadband installation essential work? Can this be justified in the context of the lockdown? I think that's a really interesting question, and I think in the context of actually the reliance we have on the internet now during this period, you would probably say if it was already there, actually it would be, and I would probably argue it is. I think this was asked 2 weeks ago about is it essential work per se at the moment. So City Fibre has what's called a statutory right to access the public footpath for utilities works. Those were all agreed ages ago via the formal planning process that they have. The government has said to construction firms, installation firms, they can still go about their daily business as long as they're practicing social distancing. So from City Fibre's perspective, they've not been told to shut down their operation by the government. They have a statutory right to access the footpath under the processes they've gone. So I think the network is probably, you would deem to be essential now. Is the installing of new network probably essential now? I think that's probably a grey area. Do they have the right to do it? Short answer at the moment is yes, until the government changes its mind on what it deems to be essential in the construction industry. Jane, a few days notice there have been rats under the bypass between Tulip Street and Tulip Retail Park. There has been quite a lot of fly tipping, we know, around the Tulip area, Retail Park area, so the railway line and then going down to the underpass. I'll pick up with Cleaner Neighbourhoods again that we are seeing rats there as well as bulk fly tipping. Everything is taking a lot longer to do because we've got smaller staff numbers, but I will pick that up with staff for you after this. Great, Simon, glad to hear that that's been sorted for her. Absolutely brilliant, good news. We've not, Kiki, in terms of cases, we've not been given postcode level information to that amount for the simple reason a lot of the cases now, when they're being picked up, they're being picked up at hospital. So at the moment, testing is only happening at NHS facilities. So we don't know if there are active cases in which particular postcodes. So that level of information is not known. There is an app which is collecting data for research purposes, which will have that level of information for GDPR reasons, and actually for the well-being of the people with the virus. That information is not being disclosed for the simple reason, if it was, potentially that could lead to unfortunate behaviours from some individuals if they know they're living next to somebody that has the symptoms or does actually have the virus. So it's a difficult one. So somebody knows, but that information is being retained for research purposes and for the NHS to make decisions. On a local level, we're not being given that for people's protections, and actually from our perspective we will just support anyone that's self-isolating. Let's have a look. Have we got any more questions coming through? I'm just going to check Facebook for questions. Bear with me 2 seconds. Somebody knows, but let's have a look. Let's have a look. Can people find emergency help over the Easter? Yes. So all of our emergency ward hubs are still functioning, Brandon. If people call through initially to the emergency number, which I've put quite a few times on my Facebook, but I will put on again at the end of this. I think I put the post on earlier with the number. A referral is being made now in real time to the hubs. So essentially, you ring through to the central number, they take your details, they'll send the information over in real time to the support hub. The support hub will then contact you as quickly as they can to basically make sure you're getting, if you need urgent assistance, the assistance now. If the assistance is not so urgent, that they get you to a volunteer that can help you if you need. That support is happening all throughout the bank holiday. So if there are people who need that support, it will still be there. Just ring that number in the meantime. Sarah, I remember you saying that you were left without broadband and phone connection. If that's still the case, please let me know and I will pick it up. I mean, Fibre put it in, and City Fibre put it in, but then the contract's run by Vodafone thereafter. But please do let me know after that in my DMs, and I will pick that up if you still don't have it. Let's have a look, see if I've had any other questions sent to me via anything else. Let's have a look at my WhatsApp. Let's have a look. A WhatsApp question, let me just have a read. Okay, it's a fly tipping question. The person that sent me that question via WhatsApp, that's a very specific one. It's an enforcement issue. I'll send you a message back if that's okay, because it would potentially be a breach of GDPR if I answered that on a live feed, but I'll pick that up for you afterwards. Let's have a look. Another WhatsApp question. Right, this is a question about Leeds Dock. We do know there's a lot of people walking around Leeds Dock. Really difficult situation for people that live in tower blocks or apartment blocks. You don't have access to a huge amount of green space. The police are taking a very kind of supportive approach to this. So we are highlighting to them where there are areas where a lot of people are congregating. If it looks like it is literal people just in passing, they're being very hands-offish. If it is look like it is people congregating for the sake of congregating and breaching the rules, they are getting involved. Leeds Dock is a really hard case because the way it's designed, it's very hard to keep the 2 metre distance. The police are aware of it. All we're really asking residents to do is to try and be mindful of what they're doing and try and keep to those social distancing rules. It's a really, really hard one. Yeah, in terms of the Phil and Sarah, in terms of the dental care, there seems to have been a miscommunication to us as councillors. So we were told service is still running, and I think a line was missed off the feedback we were giving. It's still running to provide a and referral. So essentially, aren't seeing patients as they need. It's obviously a very intrusive process looking at someone's mouth. You'd need protective gear in the current situation. So most dental practices are functioning for advice. They will advise self-care where it is possible. Where self-care isn't possible, we're then looking at the emergency protocol. So the normal, if it is an emergency, it's the normal 999 protocols, and then the dental hospital. The dental service with NHS England and Public Health England are going to be setting up some dedicated dental sites with all the proper personal protective equipment. We're waiting for the details for the ones in Leeds to come through, hopefully in the next couple of days. They're in the finalisation process. So in terms of that message, I think it was just a genuine bit of miscommunication. A line was missed off the briefing that was given to us, which caused a little bit of confusion. That's why I took the post down, because right now we need to try and limit any miscommunication where possible. But just to reiterate, they are only taking they are taking referrals via phone, giving advice where appropriate for self-care. Where self-care isn't appropriate and it is an emergency, they are making those referrals. Or if someone is suffering and it is emergency, then they should be making those referrals themselves. Simon, absolutely, yeah. Do know there's a lot of fly tipping around the Tulip Street and Middleton Railway line. I have reported that residents have put through to us. There is a lag in people picking stuff up because we're down on staff numbers, but we are trying to pick it up where possible. Let's have a look. Someone's emailed me a question in. Let's have a look. Right, in terms of the volunteers, there are two categories of volunteers, three categories of volunteers effectively in the city. The ones going through the Leeds voluntary action process, and to be fair, the NHS one, are being DBS checked in the main. So there are those that have been DBS checked. They will, where there needs to be a slightly more personal interaction with a vulnerable person, because of that, the DBS ones have been referred to those people. Where it's basically just picking up shopping or go do their shopping for them, and it's not a vulnerable person. There's not that intimate risk potentially of a person that's vulnerable and therefore needing someone that is DBS checked. That group of volunteers is supporting with that type of work. Let's have a look. I'm just updating. Let's have a look at my Facebook, see if there are any questions on that.
Basically just picking up shopping or go do their shopping.
Let's have a look. So I've done that one. so no more Facebook questions there. Let's just have a quick look at my Twitter DM. Let's have a look. So no. Okay, Twitter question. Why? Okay, so a question about how to put this politely. Why you're only seeing certain councils posting on social media? Honest answer is some councils do social media and some councils don't. Is the fair answer. Most of my colleagues are literally still on the phone, still on their emails. They're still taking things, but some of our colleagues are just not very. Not everybody does social media is the honest answer. I get told off by my other half for how much social media I do. So, that's the honest answer. That's why you're seeing some of us on social media a lot and some of my colleagues not. It's just personal preference of how they like to communicate. Also more Facebook questions come in. Yeah, Karen, the recycling centres are closed at the moment. The reason for that is basically we're concerned about social distancing. Now the government has said that or suggested that they can be opened if social distancing can be maintained. We're of the opinion at the moment that it can, and also we have staffing level requirements. So the main driver for us at the moment is keeping all those key services going. That, in terms of waste management, is getting your brown bins and getting your green bins. So there's been a huge amount of staff redeployment. If we get to the point where we get enough staff in place where we feel we can manage social distancing in a proper and appropriate safe way, I think we will revisit the waste centres, because again, obviously people want to do the right thing and recycle, but you need a certain level of staff there to make sure it's safe for the people coming and for the staff themselves. What's that behind me? That is a watering can that we use for Peggy. So when we take Peggy, my dog, out for a walk, we fill that up. We've got her a little bowl. We put the water in that because it keeps it nice and cool, and then we give Peggy her water that way. Also, I've got a nice little throw over the sofa just to give it a bit of a better look. Okay, some more questions. Slightly off topic. Several trees on Low Road outside my flat are green. I've had green paint on them. Also, the field just behind the Cllr. Catherine, no, I don't know, and I'll find out. Because that's the first time anyone's actually said that to me. So I will get back onto that. Richard, in terms of dog fouling, if there's any locations where it is a health hazard, we will still look to remove it where possible. Obviously, we're relying very heavily at the moment, people doing the right thing, bagging it and taking it back. But if there are particularly bad patches, particularly on main thoroughfares and paths, if you can let us, as whether it's in Middleton or if it's here in Hunslet or whatever, can you let us know, and then we'll get it reported through, because it is a health issue in itself. Bad over recently, fibre works have left us. Again, with the fibre works, if there are specific locations, depending on which ward you're in, because I know I'm picking up questions from slightly different wards, let your ward councils know we do have a liaison officer who works with City Fibre, and we can pass the report on. The City Fibre will come and clear up what they need to do. And again, just to reiterate on the dog fouling point, let us know, because that is a health hazard within its own right that we need to deal with. Yeah, I know, Richard, with the way it kind of clogs up. Let's have a look. Thank you, Paul. It's good to know people think the council are doing the best that we can. It's a really strenuous situation for all the officers, and I think, bear in mind the level of sickness officers have had, the sheer amount of work they've had to do. They've done a phenomenal amount of work in a short space of time. Did you know about the mobile mast being down? If this is a specific mobile mast and it's in the ward, let me know. We can get in contact with our communications team. We do know, due to a really bad bit of fake news, and I hate that phrase, that people have been targeting a 5G mast for vandalism, because someone put out there that 5G masts transmit COVID. Not true. Don't know how it could be true, but anyway, if it's a specific mast, please let us know. And we can try and get that reported. Yeah, Yeah, again, those that are Richard, those that are emptying the waste bins are doing an absolute fantastic job. And actually, if you think about it, they're touching potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of bins a day. They don't know who's touched their bins themselves. They don't know if they've had the virus. Our frontline waste teams are literally some of the unsung heroes in this, and it's good to see some of the stuff that's been put up on social media about people leaving rainbows on bins and presents for them and all that. They're putting themselves at risk and doing a fantastic job, and I think, we all complain about bins. I get a lot of complaints about bins as a councillor. The waste team are doing a fantastic job. Just on the LS10 cover Vodafone 02, I'll pick that up, Sarah, with our communications teams in the council to see if there's a known issue and if that's been reported. Generally, when there's a service down, they know themselves in the telecommunications industry, but I will pick that up. In terms of road sweeping on the Parnabys, we're not doing any road sweeping unless it's a main road at the moment, because we've redeployed those drivers to help the bin crews. So as soon as that comes back online, we've got staff levels, we will start to go over areas, but I'll be honest with you, Richard, we're not doing street cleaning unless it's the big articulated, the big kind of roads at the moment, simply because those that can drive the cages and the smaller cleaners, which we use to do those types of streets, are all helping the bin crews at the moment. Alright, Paul, I'm going to take a compliment, I'm going to take a... I wouldn't say I'm the hardest working councillor in Leeds, but I do try my best. A lot of my colleagues are working really hard now doing it. We all do it in slightly different ways, but thank you for the compliment. This is what needs though. Right, I'll pick that up if that's okay, Richard, with that. I think if it's specific to do with City Fibre and the mess they've left, I think we can pick that up with City Fibre, deal with it, because they have a requirement under their contract to clear up their mess. So if you can give me some specifics on a personal message, I will get that over to City Fibre and the Middleton councillors to pick that up, because they should be rectifying and cleaning up anything they've left. It's part of their contractual agreement under their statutory right access obligations. Let's have a look. Is there anything else coming through? Are vets still open? Vets are still open. The government has classified those as an essential service. We all have wonderful pets that we want to keep look after. So most veterinary services are functioning to one extent or another. But the veterinary services obviously is pretty much all in the private sector. So you will need to speak to your individual vet practice. But they've been told they can operate as long as they use social distancing. Let's have a look. God help City Fibre on Tuesday. Well, we'll leave it at that. Let's have a look. Is Hilary Benn's office still contactable? So this is a WhatsApp question. Hilary Benn's office is still contactable. His staff are working remotely, so is Hilary. I have a regular kind of chat with Hilary via a kind of a coffee morning every week, and he's still working from home. He's picking up quite a lot of business rate cases and repatriation issues at the moment. We've got quite a lot of citizens in Leeds who are still stuck abroad. There's a real big issue with repatriations at the moment, so Hilary's spending a lot of time dealing with the Home Office, dealing with the Valuation Office for business rates and a few other things. So that's what's keeping Hilary really, really busy at the moment. Let's have a look, see if I've got any other questions coming through. I wasn't aware that they're emptying green and brown bins separately. I mean, I'm here in Hunslet, not a million miles away from you, Richard, and we're still having our alternate collection. So that might be something you want to pick up with the Middleton councils and ask them to look at that, because there should still be alternate collections happening, for the simple reason we want to make sure that the recycling is actually recycled and not sent to the incinerator. Phil, vets only, emergency only. I thought that would probably be the case. A lot of it will probably be, like I say, referral advice. Okay, your pet's fine. Okay, your pet's not fine, come in. So I think very much like a lot of the other services, they are still able to function, but they're going to emergency practice only. It was pretty much my understanding as well. Let's have a look. Is there any other questions I've missed? Let's have a look. Sorry, it's been a bit slow. Email question. Let's have a look. Hi, Paul. Alright, this is a question from someone who lives at H2010 around the public footpath and the bit where it all kind of connects. We have let the police know that this has been an issue in terms of a hotspot. We know people are sunbathing on that island. We know there are issues of people passing each other on the bridge, people congregating. It has been picked up, and looking at your community's Facebook page, if you don't know about it, there's a H2010 community Facebook page. This has been picked up by the police, and they have done some ad hoc rounds. In fairness to the police, they are trying their best, but they don't have resources to be absolutely everywhere. Hi Paul, having problems with topping up gas on Dewsbury Road, refusing to do it unless you spend in shop. Right, I mean, that, I don't know really how to answer that one, Brendan. I mean, that's just really disappointing, is the honest answer. If a company is not willing to take top-ups, then I think, you know, people will decide what they do with their feet in that sense. That's not something the council really has any control over. They as a retailer don't need to do a top-up. I just think it's completely unreasonable, and like some of the retailers, some of the local shops who are taking advantage, say, of the Muslim community with halal meats increasing prices, etc. So people will remember behaviours like that, and they're not probably doing themselves any favours once we get past this particular crisis. But unfortunately, it's not something that we can actually support with, because they're private businesses, and as long as they're not doing anything illegal per se, there's very little we can get involved in. It's just really, really disappointing to hear. So that's really unfortunate. Let's have a look. I'm going to try and catch up on some comments. Let's have a look. Sorry, because they're coming through in all different formats. Let's have a look. What extra support are you giving as council? So, all of the, in terms, sorry, I rephrased the question because it came through via WhatsApp. So, as a council, each ward has basically a food hub, effectively, where they're getting donations coordinated to go there, and resources. We have all or just about to authorise an extra £10,000 per ward to emergency assistance. So, for example, there's 4 or 5 different organisations in Hunslet and Riverside Ward where we know they're providing a food bank assistance that isn't actually being done via anyone else, and to support the main hub, we're basically dishing out some money. That should be getting sorted out next week. Beyond that, we are just trying to link up. In fairness, the supermarkets have been fantastic with working with the council. Most of them have pitched in where they can. They've been absolutely fantastic at helping with Fair Share, set up the central coordination hub for where we're getting a lot of the donations centrally as the council before we're shipping them out to different locations. And there's a lot of first sector provision, so we're trying to provide practical help where possible. One of the big issues we're having as a council is people accessing help from the government. So particularly a lot of the charity sector, there's been a package announced for them. The community sports sector, lots of issues around business rates. I had a particular case of a couple of businesses in the ward a couple of days ago that I referred on to Hilary Benn, where essentially they're not getting the money they're due because of something the valuation office has done. So there's a lot of referral work going on at the moment from the council. We're getting people to the right people in central government. There's a lot of questions being asked. One of the big issues and concerns we have is around personal protective equipment. So there's a huge amount of pressure going to central government to sort that out. We're signing contracts as a council to buy in personal protective equipment ourselves to get it to the people that need it as quickly as humanly possible. Signing additional contracts where necessary. For example, there was an organisation in Hunslet and Riverside Ward who does personal protective equipment. Their contract had ended with the council. They said, we still want to help. We signed a new contract with them for a year. So where it is happening, we're trying to connect and liaise between people. So we're not doing everything directly. The third sector and individual organisations are doing a phenomenal amount of the lifting, but we're connecting the dots and making sure the resources get to where they can get to. Let's have a look. Yeah, this is a comment on, and I do find this to a degree distasteful. People wishing ill of other people who've got the virus, and particularly obviously the high-profile case of the Prime Minister. Look, politics needs to go out of the window during this process, frankly. Our common human fragility, our ability to all get this virus, and yes, it does affect some groups more than others, and I think, this is, as I think we've said on Newsnet, this is not a great leveller. The poorest in our society, those that can't self-isolate, those that can't work at home, are at greater risk, are more vulnerable, and we shouldn't forget that. And indeed, we need to make sure that, I think as someone put very recently, those that came last now need to come first after this. But at the same time, we shouldn't be putting out comments out there wishing other people unwell, whether we politically disagree with them or not. And I wish everyone who's been affected by this virus to get well as soon as humanly possible. In terms of, Brenda, I think what we're doing as a council, I think there's a lot going on. So there's the government shielding programme, there's the council's volunteer scheme, there's things adult social health are doing in the council, there's things our early support teams are doing for younger people, there's what the school's doing. I think as a city, Leeds City Council literally chucked its entire weight against doing what it needed to do for the virus. And it has been disappointing to see councils, some other councils across the country, perhaps not respond as quickly, but we can only do what's happening here in Leeds, and I think we've done really, really, really well. Simon, all the mosques in this ward and all the churches in this ward are closed as far as we are aware. There was a really unfortunate story put out about a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago, about a mosque on Beeston Hill apparently being open after the lockdown. This was not the case. The picture was actually taken about 3 or 4 days before the official lockdown. It was the Friday prayers before the lockdown happened. That mosque is closed, and I'd like to pay tribute to all the religious leaders here in Leeds, particularly in this ward, because obviously they're the ones I have most contact with, who have very, very challenging times managed to make sure gatherings don't happen, whether that's the Jewish community in this ward, the Christian community, the Muslim community, the Sikh community, the Hindu community. There has been a phenomenal effort, and for a lot of these faith groups, if you're an active churchgoer or a mosque goer, or you go to the synagogue, or you go to the temple, these are massive social occasions. This is the time of year where there are huge religious ceremonies. I mean, we've got Easter at the moment for those that are Christian. There's going to be Ramadan soon, and I think it's a challenging time. But just to be really clear, we are not aware of one single faith organisation that has had its doors open in this ward. Across the city, where there have been reports, they have been investigated. As far as I'm aware, most have come back as not true. Those that have been promoting, and again this is cross-faith, because again there are very orthodox traditions in most religious groups, have been advised of the impact, and it has been dealt with appropriately. So I think the faith communities in the city have done an amazing job in very difficult times on what is a very social situation. just to actually pick up what Rachel's saying, again, a lot of these religious buildings are actually being used across the city as hubs for advice and support. So I think you will see some buildings that are actually open, but they're actually doing support mechanisms like food banks rather than actually being used for actual services and worship. Thank you, Shaf. You keep well and keep up the good work I know you do in your local community as well. Yeah, Sarah, I think, again, I'm not a religious person, but I think all the religious institutions are doing a fantastic job. It's become a bit of a weird hobby of mine now. I'm actually really fascinated by the services. I've seen a few services from a few of the different religious traditions in the city, and you know the challenge of doing that on a live feed is quite interesting. Actually, day in day out, a useful exercise learning what they're doing. But yeah, I think the faith communities in the whole have been absolutely fantastic during this period. Absolutely fantastic in very, very difficult times for their congregations. Is there any more questions coming through? Is it true that pubs are allowed to act as takeaways? Yes. So the government relaxed the licensing rules. I don't know how many have actually taken this up, is the honest answer. But what the government said was anywhere that could serve food and observe social distancing could act basically as a takeaway in the interim. So if you were a gastropub and you could sell your wares online and have it done as a takeaway service, you were more than welcome to try and basically have you survive over the period. That didn't prevent them from accessing support by the cash grants, etc. But licensing laws around takeaways were relaxed, or have been relaxed temporarily while we get through this. Let's have a look. Another council question on council tax on WhatsApp. I think I referred to this earlier in the video, so you might want to rewind back, but just for clarity's sake, the council is taking the position that we will look at individual circumstances. So someone like me who is sat at home working but I'm on full salary, well, I should continue to pay my council tax. Someone who has had a cut in their income but is eligible for council tax support to cover the gap, well, we'll get them signed up to council tax support to cover the gap. Those that are just in a position where actually they can't afford it at all, well, we'll help them get signed up for council tax support, and then we'll see what we can do about the gap, whether that's a payment plan, whether that's payment deferrals, etc. So we are following a very individual approach because not everybody's in the same situation, and I think that's the right thing to do to make sure we, with the limited resources we have, I think I said earlier in the video, we're estimated that we're about £121 million worth off so far, or estimated to be worse off so far by the end of this, with the reduction in business rate, etc., and all that kind of stuff. And we've only got about 22 million back so far from the government, so we are being very careful about where we target that support to make sure the most vulnerable get it. Another pet related question. This must be because I have a dog. Are you allowed to walk your dog? Yes, you are allowed to walk your dog, but the government has now said that you have to walk your dog on a lead, not let them loose, just to make sure that you can control them so that they don't run off and then you have to go chase them and then put them back on the lead and you get near somebody. You know, if you're a pet owner like I am, you've probably noticed your dog's getting sick of you. The second they see another human being, they want to go and say hello, or if they see another dog, they want to go see hello. So yes, you can walk your dog, but you do need to have them on the lead. Let's have a look. Anything else? Let's have a look. Someone just WhatsApped about domestic violence again. Yeah, we know this is a really big issue. Again, I mentioned it earlier in the video. There's a really big push from the council and the support service at the moment to let those that are at risk from domestic violence, be they, and again it is majority women, but also men and people in the LGBT community that have quite a high impact of unseen domestic violence. The services are there. There is a link in my Facebook where I've got lots of contact numbers. I will repost that over the coming days and weeks. We do know this is a really, really big problem. Let's have a look. a direct message question. Is advice going out in multiple languages? Yes, advice is going out in multiple languages. There's a link further down in my Facebook. Again, I'll repost it if it's of help. Where someone has, I think it's Doctors Without Borders or something like that, has, I can't remember the exact name, has translated the COVID-19 advice into 36 languages. The government is now sending out advice in multiple languages on social media, so is the council, and we're doing direct adverts. So we're basically looking at the background language some people use, and we're directing adverts to them in that language. Do know a lot of organisations are using translators where possible to give out information. It is very hard. We have, I think we've got probably 50, 60, maybe 70 plus languages here in Leeds. Probably more than that when you start looking at regional dialects. So there is advice going out where possible. I do know our foreign language, I would say foreign language because obviously English is the primary language of the council. We do know a lot of the multilingual news channels are getting out advice in Urdu, Farsi, Bengali, etc., depending on that, and a lot of the radio stations are. We do know a lot of the radio stations, particularly those for minority groups, are struggling financially at the moment. There are questions going to central government about what support can be helped for them. They do play a really big important role at the moment, but we are, as best as possible, trying to get out. We've also got the police have released advice and the NHS have released advice in easy read, so that's basically pictorial with a very short sentence. I've not put any on my Facebook yet, but I'm aiming to do that. And on the council's YouTube channel and a couple of other services, there is British Sign Language videos as well. So again, we are trying to get it out in multiple formats where we can. Any other questions? We've only got about 10 minutes left. Let's have a look. No, that's fine. Is it true that the clean air zone has been delayed? Yes, I don't know if it... I think we've put in the request for it to be delayed, and I think it's been accepted, or the request has gone in. Legislatively, it has to start by a certain date. So I do know we've put the request in. I don't know if the request has been granted because I can't remember what it said in the email. But I've got a feeling it has been. If it hasn't been, it probably will be. But we do realise the clean air zone at the moment would be quite difficult, asking people, particularly those who are, say, in the taxi trade, for example, who are literally ferrying people around, who are immobile, etc., to have that imposed. So that issue has been raised. Again, I don't know if it's been granted or not. Like I said, I'd have to double check in the email. Are doctor surgeries open this weekend? This is a WhatsApp question. Doctor surgeries are, again, very much like most services, doing referral work. They're open for advice lines, etc. There's a more detailed post further down my Facebook page. I'm not going to try and quote what it says on that post because I'll probably quote it wrong. But again, if you look further down the Facebook page, there's a post on there about what's happening with the doctor's surgeries. Can we have 20 mile/h zones on the roads, please? Paul, I will pick this up. I'd already picked it up with highways prior to the lockdown, because I do know there's some worries about the junction coming off Oldham Road onto Moor Road, about speeding there, about it being a bit of a blind corner. I've picked that up with highways. I do know obviously there's the parking issue on Royal Close and Royal Drive. I'm going to pick up with highways about the potential of having a lay-by there. And I do know there's a lot of concern of speeding with cars, because it's a road you can get speed on if you want to get speed on, bearing in mind there's lots of crossings for school kids, etc. So those conversations were all happening bar the lay-by conversation, because that was only picked up last week. And so where possible, I will pick that up with officers once we get to a certain degree of normality. Let's have a look. There. Anything on Twitter? Anything on Facebook? And anything on... No! Right, so that appears to be all the questions I've been given. So I will probably just end on a few messages, if that's okay. First of all, just as I said at the start of this video, a massive thank you to everybody that is helping. That's obviously to the NHS, to social care staff, to the bus drivers, to the delivery drivers, the supermarket workers, the care assistants, to the council staff who are literally just turning government decisions into practical policies within days, to the teams in our hubs that are or the support hubs that are getting food out to the needy, to the third sector that is working its absolute socks off to help people when their income is drying up. You are all literally inspirational. It's very easy for someone like me to be sat here at home working. You are putting yourself at risk every single day to help people in this city, and quite frankly, if you're not humbled by that, I don't know what you're going to be humbled by. In terms of this weekend, look, please follow the government's advice. Please do stay at home. Look, I said at the start of this video, we're opening a temporary morgue. I pray to God, and I'm not a religious man, that we do not need to use that. And the only way we're not going to use that is if people follow the advice. This ain't a joke. It's not funny. You're not invincible. You're just not invincible. You might get the virus and you might get a mild version of the virus, but someone you know might not. And there are people who don't have underlying health issues or have other or of an older age that have died. This is not a joke. So if you think you're invincible, great for you. Don't put other people's lives at risk. It's not worth it. Because it could be someone that you know that you put at risk. It's not worth it. In terms of forward, the other big thing actually is the police are getting a lot of stick at the moment. And yes, perhaps sometimes they've over-interpreted the advice they've been given, because to be fair, the guidance given by the government hasn't been exactly crystal clear between what the legislation says and what the guidance says. Please give the police an easy ride. They are asking to do something they are not used to doing. We police by consent in this country, and they're now having to enforce people staying at home or breaking people going up about the daily business. That's not a great place to be, so please give them a little bit of leeway where possible. We should always challenge the police where it's appropriate to challenge the police. We do police by consent, but they are trying to keep people safe at the moment. And the same to council staff. We keep getting reports of a lot of council staff, be they bin crews, or be they, in majority of actually, highways workers, or people working on our street lights, etc. They're doing a job because it needs to be done. Every single part of the council we can get to work from home, we're getting to work from home. We're only getting our key workers out to work where possible, and they don't deserve the stick that some of them are getting. Some of them are getting verbally abused, telling them they're not putting people's health as a priority. It's not true. They're keeping the roads going, the lights working, the traffic lights happening. Please don't give them stick. They're doing a job and they're doing it to help people. So on that, I wish you all an absolutely fantastic bank holiday, bear in mind the situation. For those of you that have still been working, please do take a rest where you can. Look after yourself and your families. I'll be on this again next week. I will be available as normal via text, WhatsApp, phone call, email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So please don't ever hesitate to get in contact with me. I am always happy to speak. But look after yourself, look after your families, and speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye.